Hi everyone, my name is Himanshu Kathpal. Welcome to ROCon. I just realized I'm standing between you and the lunch, so I'll try not to abuse this power. The top two things that I've been hearing in the last few months is, one, identity is a new parameter, and second, any of your CTEM solution, any of your risk operations center is incomplete without identity. And I couldn't agree more with both of these statements. A lot of our customers have been asking us that when is Qualys launching their own identity solution? When are we adding the identity dimension to the risk operations center? And I have a good news to share with you guys. I'm very excited and proud to announce ETM identity for you to consolidate your identity risk posture across your attack surface, for you to measure, communicate, and eliminate your identity risks. Before we start and I share what all you can do with this product, let me ask, how many of you have a complete visibility of your complete identity attack surface across all of your IGAs, across all of your IDaaS solutions? Just one? OK, two. How many of you have a visibility of a complete dimension between identity and asset? I'm not talking about the siloed solutions, but a complete true measurement of identity risk with a toxic inside of asset context. No one? I think some of us can be best friends after this session. All right. So in this session, I'm going to first cover why identity is indeed the new parameter. I'm going to share why identity exposures break risk operations. I'm going to talk about our newest offering called as Qualys ETM Identity, the outcomes of it, followed by a small demo. And then we're going to invite the industry leader, Corey Amsler, to share his experience with the ISPM tools. All right. If we dial down the clock a little bit, let's go around 15, 20 years ago. Network and endpoints were the only two things that CISOs were concerned about. These were the only two things that they needed to protect. Over a period of time, the internet exploded. We started our migration towards cloud. We started using SaaS-based applications. And to help CISOs with it, the concepts such as SASE and ZTNA were introduced. But even in ZTNA, if you see the different components of it, the applications, the networks, all of it requires a separate authentication credentials, even still. What does it mean? It means that irrespective of your parameter, you will need to have separate authentication records for your separate entities. And that really means that identity is indeed the new parameter. And in 2025, cybersecurity criminals are not hacking. They are logging in. And it's not just me who is saying it. If we follow the report from Verizon DBIR, 80% of the breaches now involve credentials abuse. Credential abuse is still the #1 attack vector as initial point of access for yet another year. And the same report also shows that threat actors are lazy, and they now favor phishing, guessing, scraping, or buying credentials. If you follow another report that states that 34% of the breaches involves a combination of identities, misconfigurations, and vulnerabilities. This is where you need a tool, you need a risk operations center, which can combine these different risk factors into one common language of risk. Let's take an example of Snowflake. This is one of the biggest and the latest attack which was based on identity risk. How it happened? The attackers were able to compromise the credentials coming from the Snowflake customers using the info stealer, or some of those credentials were bought directly from the dark web brokers. It is very strange to understand that the customers who were impacted, they were those customers who did not have MFA enabled on their access. They were those customers who were reusing their passwords. The customers who had a good identity hygiene, good password hygiene were not impacted. And the impact was huge. As many as 165 organizations were impacted, and the extortion money was in terms of hundreds of millions of dollars, or the rough estimates say it was up to $1 billion. It really showcases how important the password hygiene, how important the identity governance is, especially in terms of high-profile SaaS-based applications. Now let's talk about why identity exposures break risk operations. So if you see, AD or Entra has the biggest blast radius. 90% of the organization's authentication backbone is based on either Active Directory or Entra ID. And whenever the breach happens based on identity, attackers, they just not log in. They remain persistent, and then they do lateral movement. On top of it, identity sprawl is messy. You are dealing with like hundreds of thousands of identities. Some of them are service accounts. Some of them have access permissions for which you have no visibility. On top of it, most of the customers, as you guys also confirmed, are struggling with having a unified vision of their identity. A lot of the customers, they do have vision, but which is only siloed. Like, they may be Active Directory visibility, there may be Entra ID, but there is no consolidated visibility across all of these identity tools which are out there in the market. The second is, even if some of you have the visibility, there is no correlation between the asset context and the identity context. So the toxic factors which the CISOs are looking for is missing. On top of it, whatever happens in Active Directory, some of the people say that stays in Active Directory. There is no audit trail for it. So that also becomes a messier point to manage, that what change was done and why. And fourth is, since this is not as prevalent or as mature as vulnerability management, there is still ambiguity in the ownership. Who needs to own it? Who needs to manage the risk of identities, whether it's IT team, whether it's security team, or it's a combination of both. Now, to help our customers with all of these challenges, we are very excited and proud to announce Qualys ATM Identity, with which you will be able to consolidate your identity posture across your attack surface to measure, communicate, and eliminate identity risks. The way we are thinking about this is, we will be covering all the 7 chevrons of ROC, which you have been hearing for the last 2 days. We'll provide you the visibility across unified asset inventory, so all of your IGAs, IDAS solutions will be able to dump all of your identities in a common platform. After it, we'll provide you risk factor segregation, whether it's coming from Qualys or third-party tools. We'll provide you threat intelligence, so that all the risk factors which has come from third-party tools as well can be enriched using Qualys' threat intelligence. We'll be providing the business context as well, which can come either from ServiceNow or from the AI tools that we leverage internally. On top of it, we'll be doing the risk prioritization for all of your identity exposure, not just identities, but your identity infrastructure as well, in one common language of risk. As we say, just inventorying the risk doesn't help, so Qualys provides closed-loop remediation as well, where we will provide you both active and passive workflows for remediating the identity risk. And finally, your auditor is going to come into your office at the end of the year. He's going to ask for the report in his favorite manner, which cannot be an Excel sheet. So this is where Qualys is going to provide the compliance and executive reporting for your identity infrastructure as well. The outcome, we will help you focus on the identities which really matters to your business. So this is an example. So for example, if you have like 500K identities across all of your different IDAS solutions, across all of your different ISPM solutions, Qualys will help you focus on the identities which are really risky. These identities, the risk of these identities can be measured based on misconfigurations, based on weak passwords, based on MFA being enabled or not. And the one thing which is very unique to Qualys is, we are also going to provide you whether your identity is being put out for selling in dark web or other forums. So if your credentials are being compromised and are being sold in the dark web, Qualys is going to provide that information to you. We're also going to enrich this identity data with the asset context, so that you can focus on the toxic combinations coming from both identities and the asset dimension. Let's take a deep dive into all of these 7 chevrons. The first one is unified asset inventory. Here, Qualys will be able to collect the information across all of your identities in a unified manner. You can do it either via Qualys agents, you can do it either via Qualys connectors, which is supported for Okta, Entra ID, Ping, and so on. As I was saying, we are one of the only ISPM vendors which can provide you information about whether your identities are exposed to dark web or not, whether someone is selling or whether someone is trying to buy your identity or not. On top of it, we'll also be providing you information about tech debt for your identity infrastructure. So if you are using EOLUS software, you are using EOLUS operating system or hardware into your identity infrastructure, Qualys is going to provide that information to you. The next step is obvious, and this is where Qualys really shines, is risk factor segregation. So Qualys will provide you the vulnerabilities and misconfigurations across all of your identity infrastructure, across all of your identities. And continuing with our ideology of ROC, if you have an existing ISPM solution, but you are struggling with getting a unified language of risk, you can still ingest the data from the other ISPM solutions, such as Bloodhound, Bloodhound, Pink Castle, Tenable, Sentinel-1, and so on into Qualys and still get the value out of the Qualys by being able to correlate your asset and identity context. All of these risk factors will be enriched by the 25 plus threat weights that we have, so that even if the data is coming from other tools and you're not getting the value or you're not able to prioritize based on that data, you can still prioritize it within Qualys. We will also be providing the compliance reports. So for the identity-based controls, which are needed for DISA stake, which are needed for CIS, which are needed for M365, will be available in Qualys, and those controls will be evaluated, and you can generate out-of-the-box compliance reports. The third is the risk prioritization. Once you have all of these risk factors, you need to understand the toxic insights. I've been talking to like hundreds of CISOs in the last 2 years, and every single CISO is saying, we only want to focus on the risk which matters to our business. We do not want to chase the laundry list of the vulnerabilities or the misconfigurations. We want to find toxic insights. An example is, you could have a server on which you are doing vulnerability management really well. You are remediating all the critical vulnerabilities. From a vulnerability management perspective, the system is 10 on 10. But the password on that system is 123456. And that system is now then used to connect to your cloud database server. So imagine the holistic risk this asset carries, and this is what CISOs wants to know. So now within Qualys platform, you will be able to understand how many of your privileged users have MFA disabled and have access to the host which has zero-day vulnerabilities, which has ransomware-based vulnerabilities. How many of your administrators have weak passwords and have access to public web servers? So these kind of toxic combinations will be provided out of the box in Qualys, and you can generate your own toxic combinations as well using the QQLs which you have been using till now. Another such toxic combination is when a lot of these vulnerabilities, a lot of these misconfigurations comes together on a lot of assets. This is where Qualys provides visualization through attack path. Now, since there are so many configurations in Active Directory over a period of time, it has become very convoluted to manage. Using this attack path, you will be able to visualize whether any of your users has unwanted, unneeded permissions, and if it can lead to privilege escalation or it can lead to attack path. One major difference that we are doing here in attack path is we'll be providing a true risk score to each of your attack paths as well. So if you have hundreds of attack paths which are identified in your environment, you will be able to analyze which attack path should I be more concerned about, and you can analyze that attack path first. So we'll be prioritizing the attack paths as well. So out of 100, we'll only tell you that these 5 are the most important. Focus on these 5 first. These attack paths will not only be available for your domain controller, but also available for cross domains as well. When we are talking about cross domains, the permissions and the configurations become a lot more convoluted. This is where the attack paths will also be extended for cross domains as well, using our domain trust cartography. Now, this is how the true risk prioritization is going to work for identities. You will have an identity. We are going to get the business context of that identity, whether that belongs to your CEO, whether that belongs to your critical service account. Then we are going to analyze whether that identity has any misconfigurations. It is involved in, let's say, weak LDAP or Kerberos roasting, etc. We are going to check if that identity is overprivileged. Do you really need admin access for that identity or not? We're going to check if that identity is getting involved in any of the attack paths or not. All of this data will be enriched by the 25 plus threat feeds that we have. And then we are finally going to check whether that identity is externally exposed or not. If it is, then the score will be increased further. And similar to your asset true risk score, you will be getting an identity true risk score as well. The best part is this identity true risk score will then be enriched as part of your business entity true risk score, so that you can get a combination of asset true risk score, getting rolled with identity true risk score to get one final true risk score. And this will become your holy grail for the prioritization. So no more silent views of assets, no more silent views of identities. Everything is coming together in a very cohesive manner for you to prioritize and focus on the things that really matters to your business. So on top of true risk, if you still want to prioritize it further, you can do it based on the toxic insights. And then the third step is attack path. So Qualys is providing 3-step workflow for you to prioritize your identity-based risk. Everything which we talked about till now was based on the proactive monitoring. but Qualys is also going to provide you active monitoring as well. So if some changes are happening in your Active Directory objects, such as someone is disabling MFA on your critical account, someone is adding someone to administrator group, someone is changing the password, you can get alerted on top of it and take one-step workflow directly from the UI to remediate those sections. And this is important as part of your audit requirements as well. Last, Qualys is also going to provide closed-loop remediation as well, where for your entire identity infrastructure, Qualys is going to help you reduce the risk. So for your Active Directory servers, for your domain controllers, for your AD infrastructure, you can do the closed-loop patching with Qualys. All of your vulnerabilities can be automated, or you will always have an option to follow the current process where the patch will be applied by the IT team after validation. For your identity actions, Qualys is going to provide one-click workflows. You will be able to disable or quarantine a user. You will be able to enforce MFA. You will be able to reset passwords based on the alerts or based on the true risk that you see on the UI. Qualys will also provide you the mitigation options. So if it's a domain controller and you do not have a reboot window for the next 6 months, what do? You can't live with the same risk. Based on the scripts being provided by our true risk team, you will be able to mitigate the risk of critical vulnerabilities as well. You'll be able to mitigate the risk for zero-day vulnerabilities. You'll be able to mitigate the risk for vulnerabilities such as WinVerify. On top of it, if you have some custom controls, if you want to evaluate some custom policies, you can always do it with the custom scripts, which will run out of the box from Qualys. The fifth is, if you're still not there and you still need to generate tickets for your IT team, for your other team, Qualys is going to provide out-of-the-box workflows using your ServiceNow, Jira, or other downstream systems. And last but not the least, you'll be able to isolate the host in case you're not able to patch it or mitigate it within your defined SLA. With that, let's move on to demo. Kevin? OK, sounds good. Thank you. All right, so this is how your ATM screen looks like today. You have getting a true risk score, you are getting the trends, you are getting the top risk factors for your critical assets based on vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, based on softwares being present or not, or based on the toxic insights that you generate for vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. But since the data is within Qualys, we have the asset context. Qualys will be able to analyze, do you have any Active Directory servers, and are you missing the identity risk? If yes, Qualys will provide an option where you can either enable identity security on top of the agents or create a connector. Creating a connector is very simple. If you are an existing AD user, you can just upgrade that connector or create that connector in the next 2 minutes if you have the credentials ready with you. Once the connector is run, you'll be getting the identity posture data within Qualys platform. The platform is going to analyze your weaknesses, your misconfigurations, and your true risk score will be enhanced. So if you see the trend line, the true risk score is now increased. And now, as part of your entire platform, the top risk factors for critical assets also include also includes your externally exposed identities and weak credentials, something which you're completely blindsided by till now. Now, for your identity persona, we have a dedicated module called as ATM Identity. You'll be able to go there. You'll be able to see the similar homepage just from the identity perspective. And if we see the contributing factors on this true risk score is only from identity perspective, and the contributing factors are related to AD attack paths, AD vulnerabilities, AD misconfigurations. And the key insights are also from a combination perspective of identity and asset dimension. Now, you can have a view based on all of your domains together, or you can move to a specific domain-based view. For example, in this case, we are going to corporate.acme.com, where all of the screens, all of the true risk score, all of the top contributing factors will be changed based on it. Now let's go on to see how the inventory is going to look like. So this is how your inventory will look like. You will be able to see the usernames, the IDs, the type of the account, your identity true risk score, and you will be able to filter it out based on any of these factors as well. The status of those identities, whether MFA is enabled or not, what was the last login date, the source of the identities, whether it is coming from Qualys, it is coming from native connectors, or it is coming from other third-party tools, and whether the identity is externally exposed or not. Once you click on the identity, you'll be able to see all the attributes, all the entitlements related to that identity, and the true risk score, and the resonating factors or the contributing factors for that true risk score as well. Once you see this true score, you can prioritize the risk accordingly. Let's move on to the integrity monitoring part. Here, you will be able to get the alerts similar to how you currently get the alerts in our FIM module. You will be able to see what was changed, who changed it, and whether that change is critical for you or not. And if you find that, for example, in this case, Emily Johnson was added to a domain administrator group. The user is just created today. As part of the security group, you have no idea why this user should be part of the domain administrator group. Since this is the highest privileged user and you have no idea about it, you can directly suspend this user account from the UI and maybe have the probe later. If you just want to create a ServiceNow ticket for this, even that option is also available. Now let's talk about the agentic AI use cases, since that has been the theme of the conference. All of these workflows around identity exposure can be managed by our cyber risk assistant, or as you guys have renamed it to, from Rocky as well. So here, I'm going to ask Rocky, what is my risk exposure from the identity perspective for one of my domains? It's going to provide me the top 3 insights, which we're seeing on the dashboard as well. And it's going to ask me whether I need to prioritize any of these 3, or let's go in the order of the risk, which has been shared by Rocky. It's going to call a specific agent called Agent Grant, which is exclusive for your identity exposure. It's going to tell me that the first risk or the first key insight for my corporate.acme.com domain is there are 2 users who have generic all permission to a GPO that controls a domain controller. Ultimately, they are getting all rights as a domain controller with this attack path. It's going to show me how these 2 users compare to from the overall user's perspective. That is, out of 5,300 users for this domain, I only need to be concerned about these 2 users. So think of the prioritization that this model is doing for us. It is also going to showcase us the attack path on how this Sam Wilson user is going from one GPO and becoming a domain controller administrator with this attack path. Since this is attack path, this may or may not be required. It is then going to give me an option whether I should be creating a ServiceNow ticket so that my IG admin can check it, or I directly want to block the access. I'm choosing a ServiceNow ticket workflow for this. It's going to ask me whether I have any more questions, and then give me a summary of the task. So imagine if you're giving this task to one of your employees, what do you expect at the end? The task should be completed, and you get a summary towards the end. All of these workflows are built within the platform using the agentic AI. Then it's going to move on to my second key insight, which is I have 10 users who have privileged access, have MFA enabled, and have access to the host which has ransomware-based vulnerabilities. It's going to ask me, what should we do? Should we enable MFA? Absolutely, why not? There is absolutely no reason why someone needs to analyze before enabling MFA. So I'm triggering that action directly from the UI. Once this MFA is enabled, it is going to ask me whether I should be creating a recurring task for it. I would say yes. Whenever you find such toxic combination, enable MFA creation task by default. Once this is done, it's going to again provide me the summary, what has been the reduction in my true risk score since I have taken a remediation action of enabling MFA. And it's going to move on to the third part, which is that I have certain entities which are publicly exposed. Even for publicly exposed identities, I directly want to reset my password. I do not want to wait for a time that someone should check and then take those actions. These actions can also directly be taken from the agentic AI workflow. And once all these 3 actions are taken, it is going to provide me a summary of what all has been done. And it's then going to take me to the dashboard of ETM identity and ultimately to ETM so that I can see how much risk has been reduced by remediating the key insights which were identified for corporate.com domain. Let's go back to the slide, please. All right. So this was our ATM identity. Please scan this QR code if you want to try your hands on this bad boy. And with that, I would like to invite Corey on stage to share his experience with ISPM solutions, the challenges which he has been seeing, and let's learn from him. Thank you all. Thank you, Corey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Corey Amsler. I'm Director of Risk Management. So I presented a couple years ago whenever they first announced ETM and talking about risk. And there was 8 people here with risk in their title. Last year, there was 20-some. So I think Sumed, he just didn't like the growth of people coming that had risk in their title, so he decided to rename the whole conference ROC. Yeah. That's my take on it, at least. Probably not true, though. But so I've come with 20-some years of industry experience, going all the way from desk side, servers, patching, last 5 years in vulnerability management. I also work for GE Vernova. Hands, who knows what GE Vernova does? Yep. We're that $40 billion company that you didn't know existed. But we produce 25% of the world's power, right? So we are a separation from mothership GE, April of last year. We have around roughly 75,000 employees. So when we're talking about identity, I have 75,000 assets that I have to worry about, right? But then think about your shared accounts, right? But also, not everything's in AD. You're going to have duplicate accounts. So, we might be 200, 300,000 records. What is your company at? Think of all those things you have to secure. So when we start with Active Directory, right, passwords. Passwords remain a weak link. How many of you have used PA55 Word in your life? Right? I heard a couple chuckles over there. If you have shop floors, right? You walk around, there's PCs on there. What do the operators of that shop equipment do? A little sticky note right there with their password on it, right? Well, guess what? Did you have least privilege access on those shop floors? Or does your user have local admin, right? So talk about the excessive permissions. You also have Active Directory certificate security. Are you able to monitor those, flip those certificates, keep them up to date? Now, we're in a world now where it's not just AD. That would be great, right? We could have one system, be able to see all the misconfigurations in there, but you're probably on-prem, you're probably in AWS, you're probably in Azure, maybe you're in GCP, maybe you're in OCI as well, right? All these clouds coming together, what do they have? All have their own identity stores, right? You also might use something like Okta or another one as well to try and consolidate them, but that's just more to manage, right? So we don't really have a holistic offering there to see all of our misconfigurations, all the accounts all in one place. The next thing is I want to chat about is regulations. How many of you work with the Department of Defense? Right? I see a couple head nods. CMMC, it's been announced maybe a decade and a half ago, maybe. Well, did you wait? Hopefully not, because you have 26 days to meet CMMC level 1, right? November 10th. Yeah, the government shutdown might help you a little bit, but it's not going to push it off that far, right? But we have CMMC, you have all the other ones, SOC, HIPAA, if you're GDPR, if you're over in the UK, right? So you have all of these different regulation bodies that you have to meet. It's not all bad news, though, right? They mostly all kind of have a consistent theme. You have strong authentication, your password management. They might not be the same, but they're going to be similar. They're all going to have a password management reason, right? Access control, practice that least privilege, so the janitor on your shop floor doesn't come by that machine that has that sticky note on it, log in there, and get all your information because someone in the parking lot, paid them some money. So what do we need, right? Coverage against misconfigurations in that cloud, right? Can we see them all together in one source? Your Active Directory, you need to actually monitor that as real time as possible so you can see those suspicious misconfigurations right now and go attack it before the adversaries get into it, right? Hopefully you have established KRIs, right? I'm sure all of you have it for your vulnerability management, whether it's 30, 60, 90 or your code campaigns, you have something there. What do you have for your accounts though, right? So the thing that Himanshu introduced, right, with identity, gives you this transparent, rolled-up view of risk as your assets and your identities all rolling up into one, so you can see that, right? Because that holistic approach to identity security is critical, right? We need to see that when we're looking at a full risk base. So, Syed actually stole my thunder, an hour ago, because he said, hackers don't want to hack; they want to log in, right? You've heard yesterday and today a couple of times about, a car company that has been in the news recently for a breach. Rumor on the street is there was identity issues there. Right? So if you would like to follow me on LinkedIn, there's my information. I just want to leave you with one thing. If you really, identity risk has become one of the most exploited and least visible threats organizations see today, right? So with that, your security teams need to have a unified insight aligning all their identity risk with asset risk, right? In order to act decisively and go get those bad guys. No effective exposure management system is complete without it. With that, Himanshu kind of lied. He wasn't between you and lunch. I was the actual one. So we're done, so we can actually go and have some lunch. Thank you all.
Thank you, Himanshu and Corey.